Steel is everywhere. Cars, bridges, skyscrapers, even your washing machine. It's the backbone of modern life and economic growth. Because it's so essential, global steel trade is a multi-billion-dollar industry connecting nations. When steel flows smoothly, economies thrive. When it's blocked, problems ripple worldwide. Countries like China export surplus steel, while fast-growing nations like India import it to build infrastructure. The price of steel impacts everything from cars to hospitals, making it a key economic indicator. Governments monitor the steel market closely, as disruptions can signal economic trouble. Competition in steel keeps prices low, but it's tough for producers in high-cost countries. This creates tension. Cheap imports benefit buyers, but threaten local jobs. At its core, the steel story is about national power, economic strategy, and millions of livelihoods. Trade disputes over steel aren't just about tariffs, they're about real-world consequences for factories and workers. Decisions in places like Brussels, New Delhi, and Beijing can determine whether industries survive or collapse. The global steel market is a battleground shaping the economic map of the future. The stakes are high, and every move matters. The first big move came from Europe. The EU, home to a massive steel industry, faced a flood of cheap Chinese steel. European producers accused China of dumping, selling steel below cost to undercut local businesses. The EU launched an investigation and found Chinese steel was harming European companies. In response, the EU imposed anti-dumping duties, special taxes on certain Chinese steel imports. The goal: make Chinese steel less competitive and protect European jobs. This was a clear message to Beijing. Europe would defend its industries. The EU's actions set a global precedent, watched closely by other steel-producing nations. Countries like India, facing similar challenges, saw the EU's move as a blueprint. The decision showed that major economies were ready to challenge China's trade practices. For India, this was a turning point, proof that defending local industry was possible. The EU's tariffs didn't just protect steel, they reshaped global trade dynamics. Other nations now had a model for standing up to unfair competition. The stage was set for the next big player to act. Inspired by Europe, India took decisive action. The government, aiming to boost domestic manufacturing, faced pressure from struggling steelmakers. On July 22, 2025, India announced targeted tariffs on Chinese steel imports, especially flat-rolled steel used in cars and construction. These tariffs aimed to level the playing field for Indian producers. The government argued this wasn't protectionism, but a defense against unfair dumping. Without action, India risked losing its steel industry and jeopardizing its economic ambitions. The tariffs were a lifeline for local factories and workers. India's move aligned it with the EU, signaling a united front against China's trade tactics. Major developing economies were no longer willing to accept unfair trade flows. Tariffs became a tool for self-defense in the global market. India's decision sent a powerful message: it would protect its interests. The global steel battle had a new determined player. The world took notice. China's response to India's tariffs was swift and forceful. Beijing denied dumping accusations, insisting its steel was competitive due to innovation and scale. China called India's move protectionist and warned of serious consequences. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce threatened retaliation, hinting at tariffs on Indian exports like software and pharmaceuticals. For India, this raised the stakes. China is a vital export market. The dispute quickly escalated into a high-stakes standoff. China also took its case to international forums, defending its practices and criticizing unilateral tariffs. Beijing argued that global steel oversupply required cooperation, not trade barriers. China painted itself as a defender of free trade, seeking global support. The message: if you block our steel, we'll block your goods. The world watched as two giants squared off. The trade war rhetoric intensified. The effects of these tariffs hit home in both India and China. Indian steelmakers got relief, more production, job security, and investment. But Indian industries using steel faced higher costs, raising prices for cars, homes, and appliances. For China, losing the Indian market stung, adding to global trade barriers. Chinese steel companies risked production cuts and job losses, threatening social stability. The tariffs also damaged China's reputation as a trading partner, encouraging others to follow suit. Globally, the steel market grew more volatile. Chinese producers sought new markets, risking price drops and trade disputes elsewhere. Other countries faced tough choices: accept cheap steel or join the push for fair trade. The showdown created uncertainty, shifting alliances and trade flows. The global steel market became a pressure cooker. Every country now had to pick a side, or risk being squeezed. The ripple effects were impossible to ignore. Trade wars aren't just headlines, they touch real lives. In India, steelworkers gained job security, but consumers faced higher prices for homes and goods. Small manufacturers struggled with rising costs, forced to choose between raising prices or cutting profits. In China, steelworkers worried about layoffs as exports shrank. Families in both countries felt the impact. Job stability for some, uncertainty for others. Every policy creates winners and losers. Protecting one group can hurt another. The Indian government shielded its steel industry but at a cost to consumers and other businesses. China's export drive supported jobs at home but threatened jobs abroad. The human side of trade policy is complex and often overlooked. Every decision ripples through communities and families. The steel showdown is about more than economics, it's about people's futures. Understanding these trade-offs is key to grasping the true stakes. This isn't just a fight over steel, it's a sign of a changing world. For decades, globalization meant fewer trade barriers. Now, countries demand not just free but fair trade. The India-China dispute tests their relationship and could shape Asia's future. Will they negotiate or escalate into a wider trade war? The outcome will impact global stability and prosperity. The World Trade Organization's authority is fading as countries act alone. If this trend continues, the world economy could become more fragmented and chaotic. The steel showdown is about the kind of world we want, cooperation or conflict. Decisions made today will shape the global economy for years to come. The world is watching as history is forged in this trade battle.